What's up? I'm Justin Young, and he's Griffin Greenburg, and this is the Fast Break right here on Hoop Scene TV. We appreciate you watching. There's so much holiday hoops to talk about. We've been talking about it all week over at hoopscene.com. We had to bring in Griffin Greenburg out here in the West Coast with me to talk about some of the big-time events that you were at over the post-Christmas holiday season. I was out in Vegas prior to Christmas, and you're out there in California at the Holiday Classic and the Classic at Damien. A lot of classics going on. But first and foremost, Happy New Year to you, Griffin.
Happy New Year as well. I hope you had, great holiday. A lot of basketball, as you mentioned, over on hoopscene.com that all of our team got through. So it was a fun little holiday break.
It was cool, man. Like we had guys, you're in California and Josh is out in Florida and in North Carolina, and JB's all over the place in his truck. Out, Garrett was in Alabama. I feel like a parent with so many kids, you forget everybody's name. So yeah, we were all over the place, and I've got a stack about 15 games deep in my queue to watch some videos. So yeah, man, that's that time of year, and it really for us is you've kind of gotten to learn already being with us. It's a huge opportunity for us to really kind of measure some apples to apples, as I like to say. So we certainly saw a lot of good stuff, and let's just jump right into it. You saw some really good stuff in San Diego, and then you left San Diego, you came back up to Los Angeles area for some really good action. Collectively, there's two different events, and you saw a lot of good stuff. But when you look back on the post-Christmas holiday season, who won the tournament season, literally, I think, and figuratively?
Yeah, I mean, San Diego at the Holiday Classic, great event every year at Torrey Pines. It was their last year. It was really fun with Bishop Gorman winning. This year it was St. John's College. I mean, top to bottom, they were just so impressive. Undefeated on the season, one of the few really, really good undefeated teams left that has, a few ranked players.
Yeah.
And I mean, who won literally as each player? I think Donnie Freeman and Daquan Davis. They were great. I mean, both 2024 kids. Not enough could be said about them. I think Donnie has a great build and so much athleticism, and I believe he's around that 40th spot in the rankings. And Daquan Davis is another really solid player who I don't know if you saw their game against last night against IMG, Justin. He was hitting deep threes in that upset win. So, they're undefeated. They had a great showing at the Holiday Classic, and they're really going to be a team to watch for the rest of this season.
Yeah, it's interesting. DC to me is my favorite metropolitan area in the country for basketball. And so for St. John's to go all the way across the country, as we know, there was so much it was such a headache to travel. So I don't know if they ran any of that getting out of DC to come to San Diego, which, by the way, is a win in of itself to leave DC winter to go down to San Diego, which is a gift that I think will never stop giving. And then to go out there and to play. And then, like you said, to go out there and to beat IMG. I think IMG, man, we saw them a lot at the Hoop Hall West. They're big, they're strong, they're physical, really well coached. So for St. John's to stay undefeated to get that win, I think that says a lot. I know our friends like Samad Hines and Ronnie Flores and the guys that do all the national rankings, that certainly is enough for them to make their case to be really one of the premier programs in the country. What was from your point of view, like if you had a snapshot describe the backcourt of Freeman and Davis, like what word comes to mind?
It's they put Freeman more at that big spot. It's fun to watch him because they run this press where he's manning the front, and he's like 6'8" or 6'9", so he plays more of that forward role, but he mans the front in that press, and that's why it's so deadly, and teams can never break it. So they're very effective, but their backcourt is Malik Mack, who's Harvard commit, and Davis. And
that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
I think you could very well argue it's one of the best scoring backcourts in the nation. I mean, Mack is such a fun player to watch. He's very shifty, very creative, very high IQ. And then Davis is such a good scorer. And it just, really completes their team and makes them a very deadly backcourt.
It's funny, like Harvard does such a great job of finding guys that fit what they're all about. We'll talk about another one of their commitment signees a little bit later here in the show. But, when we look at a guy like Davis, and you talked about him being a top 40 guy, that's a great spot to be ranked, no doubt about it. Was he a guy that maybe deserves a little bit more of an uptick too?
I would think so. I mean, like I said, his size, and a lot of these, scouts and recruiters look at size and how these kids are built. It's very elite, 6'8", 6'9", great athletic builds. And I think he could really creep up a few spots as well. I know he's down to 5 schools, I believe, but he said his recruitment is open, I'm pretty sure, on Twitter. But he can definitely make a case for, jumping up a few spots.
Another team I think that's in the case for jumping up a spot as a team is we saw Liberty do some work. I saw them a ton at the Tarkanian Classic. They had an upset loss in the first round to Cal High School out of Atlanta. That probably fueled the destruction warpath that they were on going out there at the Damien or at the Classic at Damien. What was it about those guys from Vegas that allowed them to win such a prestigious tournament?
I mean, they just played together from top to bottom. And I think the biggest thing is that each player knows their role and they do it so well. And I obviously didn't get to Tark. You were there. And I don't know if they just weren't, each player wasn't doing their role there or something like that. But they showed that they played together really well. And I mean, they took down Notre Dame, who was ranked, 5-star Caleb Foster, 4-star Dusty Stromer, Mercy Miller. They took down Rancho Christian, who was really good. They were one of the better teams at the Classic as well for some time. And then, in the championship against Harvard Westlake, they beat all these top teams. And they're an undersized team as well, playing, like I mentioned in my article, undersized and underrated. But each of these players plays their role so well from top to bottom, really. I mean, you can name anyone from Dedan Thomas at the top. Angelo Kambala was amazing this tournament. Tyus Thomas was great. Caden Castellero, Andre Porter. So, I mean, all these guys, they just did what they needed to do, and it showed throughout the Classic.
Let's talk a little bit about that backcourt. Kambala is a shot maker. Was he just knocking down threes with ease?
Definitely. I mean, in the championship game, he came out firing like 4 threes in the first quarter. He had 7 overall in that game. He just brings so much energy to the team, and it seems like he doesn't miss most of the time, Justin.
I think he plays with such an irrational level of confidence, and I love it. You know what I mean? Like I was watching the Nuggets the other day, and Bones Highland is that kind of guy for me, where you're just like, oh no, oh my God, yes, one of those guys. But every time he shoots, kind of know it's got a chance to really wreck some stuff. I thought Dedan Thomas was to me the best guy that I saw in Vegas at the Tark. We're redoing our rankings for the 2024 class, and I spent a lot of time really looking at that. There's some good guards in that class, no doubt about it, but we're about to move Dedan up into our 5-star range in between the 20 and 25 range. So that's some breaking news if you really want to know it. But I think to me, he's the guy that when I watch him, I've seen some like Jalen Brunson comps, which is fine, which I get. And maybe I'm a little biased because I watch the Suns so much, and I'm not saying that Dedan Thomas is going to be an NBA Hall of Famer like Chris Paul, but I do think there's that type of control and a guy that can score. Like, younger Chris Paul could really go get some buckets. Now he's older. I don't think he is. So there may be a little bit more of a recency bias where people hear Chris Paul, they think a certain style of game. But Dedan Thomas, and that's why I think the Jalen Brunson comps actually do make some sense. But he can really score, but he can also set up a guy like Angelo Kambala, know he's hot, know he's the sniper out there on the perimeter and knock some shots down. But, man, I love to see that they won because I thought they were a tremendous team. They just happened to run into Peyton Marshall, who's going to Auburn, who's probably the biggest high school kid there is in North America. Just a massive dude, and that's ultimately what did them in out in Las Vegas. But let's talk about some players that you saw that also kind of won the event per se. Can you have like a checklist? You have a number of guys you kind of want to run through. Who are some of the players that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I'll go through a few from each. I think we'll start with the Holiday Classic, since that was the first event I went to. Ryan Beasley was sensational. I mean, I don't think many people knew who he was coming in. San Francisco commit, but he was dropping 30, 40 points a game multiple times. 30 against San Ysidro, which, Jim's going to be packed to see Mikey Williams and San Ysidro. But he was definitely one of the best players out at the Holiday Classic. I think Jacob Kofi was really good as well for Eastside Catholic. Justin, I don't know if you've
let me pause you for a second. So Ryan Beasley, like, we talk about the West Coast Conference, and for years it was Gonzaga. Now BYU comes in, they've got some guys and they'll have some wins and be a contender. But San Francisco and Todd Golden was there, obviously really raised the stakes. But how do you maintain and how do you sustain levels, right? Where we've seen like programs like Wichita State maintain coaching changes and be good. Murray State maintain coaching changes and stay really, really good. Furman's a place that's had different coaches that's maintained their level of play. Georgia State might be another program like that. When I look at San Francisco, I think that's the same type of thing that I look at. Like, okay, here you have this young stud coach and Todd Golden who comes around, does some great things with the program after taking over from Rex Walters. Now he hands it over. He leaves, and there's new staff that comes in, and you get a guy like Ryan Beasley, and that's how you sustain success. I'm with you, man. I think Ryan Beasley, to me, when I look at the West Coast, is one of the most significant signees there is in the 2023 class. Are we in 23? We are in 23. Have you had to do that yet? Where you probably don't really write too much, but the old days on the checks you had to write, I used to always write the wrong date for like 6 months. Anyway, so Ryan Beasley, I think he's one of those guys in the 23 class that to me, when it comes to like impact, I think he's one of those guys. I think he's an all-conference level type of prospect coming to San Francisco. Anyways, I had to get him a little shout out because I love that dude.
Definitely, you said it, and WCC is only getting better.
So. Yeah, no doubt about it. St. Mary's. How could I forget St. Mary's? Sorry, guys. I mean, the league from top to bottom, I'm with you. It gets better and better and better. Sorry, I had to interject. I had to get that in there. But let's talk about Jacob Kofi for a second, because I thought he was really good at Section 7 back in the summertime. It looks like he's continuing that forward still in the high school season.
Yeah, I mean, 6'8", 6'9", big man. I think he's listed center, but I think he's more of a power forward. I think you could argue he has the best skill set and handles for any player over 6'9" in the country, especially in his class. He's such an elite ball handler, which is so not uncharacteristic, but you don't see it as much for someone his size. And you'd think he'd just stay on the block and post up, which he can at times too. But he's bringing the ball up and doing all these crazy dribble moves, getting around guards. And he's one of those more unique players that's really exciting to watch for that reason. Really good in the mid-range area. He was hitting fades all over the court, hit some threes too. Really effective rebounder. And I mean, I love him. He was great for Eastside Catholic at the Holiday Classic. And I mean, you mentioned you saw him at Section 7. I saw him a little bit there. He was very good there too. So.
Yeah, I think he's about to move into a priority category for darn near every Pac-12 school there is. I'm with you. I think his mid-range game was really, really tough. Be interested to see how his recruitment takes on some national form as well. I'm not saying there's any connection there. I'm just throwing this out there. But don't forget, Louisville recruits Seattle really, really well, no matter who the coach is. So he's the type of guy that I think that does warrant a national recruitment as well. So Jacob Kofi is a guy that I knew a lot of head coaches saw a lot in the summer too. Were there any coaches there? How are the coaches? Are they a good number of guys out there? For them? This type of year is hard for those guys to get out and recruit. I'm just curious what the size look like.
I wasn't really looking. I'm not sure how many were there, but I'm sure there was at least a few.
Yeah, they can blend in a little easier in the scholastic stuff than they can on the travel. That's for sure.
Right.
Let's Brady Dunlap is a guy that we like a lot. We talked about him quite a bit at the Hoop Hall. What did he do? The Notre Dame commitment.
I mean, he was just making shots all over the court. Their first game I got to saw on day 2. That was the Etowanda game. Harvard Westlake was actually losing. They had this a bit in the tournament where they have a pretty rough first half, but come back in the second. And he's just a big time shot maker. I mean, creates for himself, doesn't need to do much to get open. I mean, that size, you can really just shoot over anyone, and he can hit it from anywhere on the court. So he was really impressive. He had a few 20, 25-point games for Harvard Westlake, and he was definitely one of the best players out there.
People were like, oh, is he good enough to play in the ACC? I think so. I think he picked the right spot. I've seen different guys go to Notre Dame, play for Mike Bray, that were maybe a little underrated, or guys are like, oh, well, why is he going to Notre Dame? I think Brady Dunlap picked the perfect place within the ACC to go play. A coach's son, a junkie, plays with some swagger, plays with a lot of confidence. I think he's going to be really, really good at Notre Dame and really thrive in that system. So I'm with you there. It's funny, Griff, one of the things people think I'm joking when I say this, when I go back home to Atlanta, like, oh, well, like, what do you like about the West Coast? I'm like, what's really good? The state of Idaho is one of my favorite places to find players. And people are always like, Idaho, like Idaho potato. Yes, Idaho. That's one of my favorite places to go. And one of the guys that we've been talking about quite a bit from Idaho, from Boise at Owyhee, is Liam Campbell. And that dude's an absolute bucket. I think a lot of people say he kind of blew up last year at the Classic at Damien. What did he do this year?
I mean, he just did more of what he did last year. Former Harvard Westlake kid, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
29 points a game, 29 or 30. He was fun to watch, and they almost pulled off a first-round victory. I believe it was against Rancho Christian, where he had, I think it was 30. But he doesn't just score the ball. He can do a lot. He rebounds,
You're right.
great court vision. He does a lot more than scoring, but I feel like a lot of people only give him that recognition for scoring.
He has the ingredients to be the guy when March Madness comes around, wherever he goes to college, that you love him or you hate him. You know what I mean? You hate him because he's kicking your ass probably in March, but he's a guy that can go get a bucket, like create for himself, create for others. I think he's a guy that plays in the second weekend, maybe even beyond that in college in March. He's got that type of pedigree, and they win, man. They freaking win. They're not afraid to go play some David versus Goliath type of matchups, and they usually slay the dragon along the way. So it's good to hear his name again. Didn't hear a lot about him over the last couple of months, so it's good to see him back in that spotlight again. A guy that we have in our top 100, and a guy that we count really highly as one of the best scorers and best guards there is in the West, not just the West, but the country in 2024. Let's pivot a little bit. When we look at these past two events that you're at, who really impressed you the most as far as like really improving their stock? Who played like Liam Campbell last year, really? Like who did enough to really put themselves into a bigger conversation?
I think at the Holiday Classic, it was the two of the St. John's College kids. We mentioned them before, Daquan Davis and Donnie Freeman. I think they were unstoppable from the games at the Classic, and I know that trend continued throughout. So they're definitely, and both 2024 kids uncommitted, by the way. So they're definitely going to keep rising their stock. We talked about Freeman a little and how that could happen, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it happened to Davis. And I'd say two committed kids from the Classic at Damien were Angelo Kambala, who, I mean, just amazing overall at the Classic. And then Robert Hinton was very good as well. I believe he was a little quiet in that Etowanda game, but since then he picked it up. And I love Hinton because it seems like he'll get 6 or 7 offensive rebounds a game. He knows he's a very smart player, which, I mean, I guess you'd expect for someone going to Harvard. But he just leaks around that paint area and cleans up the glass very well for his size. Doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but he still, dekes out defenders, able to get to the hoop and finish. And, really high energy player. And I think he was huge for Harvard Westlake making it as far as they did.
I think if you talk to really smart basketball people, they'll tell you the value that you get from an offensive rebounder is exponentially better than a guy that maybe just, that guards really, really well. Second chance opportunities come from really good offensive rebounders. So I'm interested to see for a guy, because I'm with you, he's an elite athlete, which, by the way, I think he's going to have some top 10 moments in his career when he goes to Harvard playing the Ivy League. But keeping possessions alive, I think he's going to be really, really good at that, as you mentioned, because of his offensive rebounding skill. And it's same with Kambala too, right? I think another guy that's going to be a top 10 Sports Center guy because of his shot-making ability. We know Todd Simon with his, history there in the city of Las Vegas to get him to come up there to – no, not Todd Simon. He's going to Utah Tech, right?
Kambala?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Todd will get good players at Southern Utah, but Utah Tech, it's weird because they changed their name from Dixie State to Utah Tech. But for Utah Tech, that's significant to get a Vegas player of his stature to go up there, up the highway to St. George and be a really good player up there in those beautiful Red Rocks. Great underrated city, by the way. Terrific underrated city. Let's talk about some unsigned seniors for a second. We know a couple of guys that a lot of eyeballs are kind of falling around now. Here we are into the 2023 season as the late signing period approaches in March. A couple guys stood out to you in this category.
Jurian Dixon for sure at the Holiday Classic. St. Augustine, guard forward. I'd put him as a guard. But he's about 6'4", 6'5", I believe. But I mean, he'll just score 25 routinely with ease. It's surprising that he hasn't picked up the national attention that he deserves. And maybe that's because San Diego is a little bit quiet typically in terms of players, even though there's great players. We mentioned, Mikey Williams, Jake Hall at Carlsbad. There's a few really good players out there, but I think Jurian Dixon was a player that really was impressive overall at the Holiday Classic.
Yeah, I'm with you. He is a bucket. And I think he had a bit of a lull in the travel season. So I think he's always better with the Scholastic team with St. Augustine. And really good coaching, really good system for him to go get loose. If you can go find it, he had a dunk at the Tark that was just bananas. So if you're into that kind of stuff, maybe you can do some searching and go find it because it was tremendous. Another guy that I think was a senior that you had on your notes was a guy that we saw and that we loved back at the Hoop Hall West was Kevin Patton Jr., a guy that quite frankly, we know quite a bit of hoop scene. Played at our hoop scene West Camp a couple years ago. He was here in Arizona, played at Compass, and then played down at where was he at? Maricopa, I think it was. Now he's out there at Rancho Christian. But is his trend continuing to move upward?
For sure. I mean, he's such an explosive and dominant player. I think he had 10 blocks one game.
Did he really?
Yeah, but he's such an explosive player, such a fun player to watch, can knock down threes, and he's about 6'7" You don't only go near him when you're on offense and driving to the hoop. I mean, he's a player to watch out for because he's just going to make you pay for coming down there.
You always feel like he's still, even though he's a senior, that he's still a prospect more than he is a player. You know what I mean? Like, you still feel like there's so much more in the tank for him to tap into, where we see other guys go on to college and get even better and really emerge. He could be one of those guys too. I've always been really intrigued by him. I think if that perimeter game really becomes super consistent, he could be a guy that really turns out to be a huge steal for somebody as well. One great thing about these events is the opportunity for us to see some underclassmen, get them on our list of watch list and players that we want to see in the travel season coming up around the corner. Were there 3 or 4 guys for you that kind of fit that category that were 25, 26 class?
Yeah. I think all my guys were 25 that I had and really noticed. I think T. Bartlett was pretty good at the Holiday Classic. First day was a little quiet, but it very, very much improved as the days went on, and he had a very nice showing out there in San Diego. And then Alec Blair, who a lot of people don't really know about, De La Salle kid, and they play so much team ball and together that he kind of goes unnoticed, but he'll still give you a sneaky 15, 20 points a game. So he did really well as well. I think at the Classic, Nick Kamania was great. He's been a player I've watched a lot recently, more shifted to a ball handler and more of a point guard now, which I think Coach Rabibo is doing a good job at finding Kamania's natural position. In a sense, he looks a lot more comfortable out there right now, bringing the ball up, and he gets all of his teammates involved. And for a 2025 kid, he's 6'6" or 6'7", but he's going to be a kid to watch out for sure down the line. And I mean, it's just the Harvard Westlake talent once again. I mean, you'll still have Trent Perry next year, Robert Hinton, and now Kamania. It just keeps on coming.
Yeah, I love Kamania. I'm a Kamaniac. I think I just dubbed the new nickname for him. I hope I did. That sounds amazing. I'm with you, man. I love him. I think he's really, really talented. I saw him a lot in the travel season, of course, with Harvard Westlake as a freshman. He's going to have 4 years of really good experience come out of one of the best programs in the country. I'd be remiss to not talk about Mikey Williams. I mean, I think, didn't he play like a showcase game or what matchup was it that I remember? It feels like 10,000 years ago now. Before Christmas, they played a before Christmas game.
They played La Costa Canyon, actually my old high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they played them.
PTSD, or are you good?
I'm all right. Hang in there. They played them on the 23rd in the Holiday Classic tip-off night.
Got it.
It went down to the wire. I mean, Mikey scored about 35 points, 40 points in that game. And I think what stood out to me most is that he just took over at the end. He's someone who people don't realize he can get a bucket anytime he wants to. But sometimes, he'll get his teammates involved. I think he had 10 or 15 assists in a game at the Holiday Classic as well, but which isn't bad, obviously, to get your teammates involved. But if they needed a bucket, he was the guy, to go to, and he showed it in that game. Just dominated in clutch time, and he was really fun to watch. And I know he put together a very nice tournament event overall, had about 25 points against Doherty Valley and Beasley, and had a nice game after as well.
Well, they won some games, and I think that's really, the key for him is just being able to be the closer and get some dubs before he heads off to Memphis. So any last thoughts from you, Griffin, on these 2 tournaments that you saw in California after Christmas?
I've just been saying it all episode today. Just watch out for St. John's College. I mean, nice win against IMG last night. They're going to be very scary the rest of the season.
I love it. We'll be interested to see where they stack up, if they can continue to keep it going. So, well, we appreciate your coverage. We appreciate your work for hoopsing.com out there here on the West Coast. We got some big stuff coming up. I know you're hitting the road. You're going to be into some NIBC stuff as well. So make sure what's a good Twitter account for them, for the fans and people that are watching this, to keep up with you?
Yeah, Griff Greenburg, GriffGreenberg. And I mean, I just tweet, live content all the time of all these events that I'm going to. So you mentioned some NIBC events. I'll be heading out to Indiana and then Massachusetts the following week as well for, Hoop Ball Classic, which everyone loves. But yeah.
Man, for a San Diego dude, I hope you got some winter clothes, bro. That's some cold cities right now.
I got a couple things and definitely going to need to use them.
No question about it. No question about it. Well, if you made it this far in the video, we appreciate that. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and that little bell that tells you when we've uploaded our video. So if you can do us a favor and do that, we got tons more content coming up this year. Me and Griff out here on the West Coast with him and his winter excursions all over the country with basketball. We'll have you posted up all over the nation, and we'll talk right here, all about it right here. There we go. I need some coffee, I think, right here on the Fast Break on Hoopscene TV. For Griffin Greenburg, I'm Justin Young. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next week right here on hoopscene.com.